thing.
No, let me finish. Why won't you let me answer that? Why won't you let me actually say what people are recognizing? You come back and there are open borders and you're told that you are racist, okay? You come back and you're told that you are racist if you don't want open borders. Meanwhile, you're sent overseas to defend Israel's borders. No, let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish.
You're basically, you're encouraging
Piers,
US servicemen and women to dishonorably discharge.
You play a clip and I'm trying to answer it. You know, you can't do that. You asked a question.
Well, you're trying to downplay it.
And I'm responding. No.
Welcome back, everyone. Candace Owens was back on the Piers Morgan show and she almost lost it. She discusses Israel, Iran, Palestine, US support for Israel, regime change in Israel, amongst many other things. Let's take a look.
Are you saying that America should never use any military action then?
No. I'm not saying America can never use any military action. In fact, what I said earlier was I could get behind a regime change in Israel because I think it would fix a lot of issues that are happening and that has been happening to America over time. Like I said,
why wouldn't you want it in Iran? I mean, I'm reading an Amnesty International report from 2024.
Because Iran is not negatively impacting. I'm answering your question because Iran's regime is not negatively impacting America on a day-to-day basis.
When the leader of Iran says death to America, why doesn't that concern you?
That's a chant. And by the way, I want to be very clear. Why are they chanting death to America? Why are they chanting that? That's kind of a random thing. Like I don't wake up one day and go like,
dead?
But why do they want? Why are they specifically chanting as opposed to saying, I don't know, death to China or death to Russia? What is it specifically about America?
Well, they say death to America, death to Israel, death to the United Kingdom, actually.
Oh, okay.
Death to pretty much anyone that wants to stand up to them.
Could have had something to do with our actions in the Middle East is why I'm saying that we need a change in foreign policy. It maybe has something to do with just like killing 1 million Iraqi civilians, okay, because Bibi Netanyahu got on a congressional stage and said there are weapons of mass destruction, and we took that to the bank and there actually were no weapons of mass destruction, so we just killed 1 million. It could have something, I could be crazy, it could have something to do with our actions in the Middle East. The fact that we have 2,000 troops stationed in Syria right now under the guise of saying that we're fighting ISIS, while at the same time we know that Bibi Netanyahu funded the Al-Qaeda adjacent front because he wanted to overthrow Syria, and they again expand their borders, immediately take on territory and sell us absolute nonsense. We're talking about funding Hamas. Bibi Netanyahu funded Hamas. There is footage of Bibi Netanyahu saying this stuff on camera. So it's just so ridiculous to me to pretend that they're in some predicament, that they may be eradicated soon, which is why they have to keep funding all of these terrorist groups and then pretending that they're victims of terror, when in fact they are the people that are imparting it worldwide.
What has Iran done that directly affects any Western country on a day-to-day basis? Nothing Iran has ever done affects my life or anyone else's living here in the UK. Candace makes a fantastic point. Nobody wakes up randomly and says death to this country or that country unless there were some underlying issues. What's the underlying issues here that would explain almost every country in the Middle East and Far East hating Israel? Could it be, as Candace explains, the killing of millions of Iraqi civilians? Could it be the ongoing genocide and mass imprisonment of the Palestinians since 1948? Could it be the ongoing unjustified attacks on Palestinians, Syrians, Lebanese, and now the Iranians? Israel has been at the heart of every conflict in the Middle East, directly or indirectly.
But you wouldn't disagree, presumably, that Iran has been the main sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East through the Houthis, through Hezbollah, through Hamas. I mean, that's widely accepted and recognized. They've done it.
Things widely accepted. Now, that's just kind of...
Really? You don't think they have?
Has been a terrorist state. Okay, Israel right now is imparting a genocide and a Holocaust on the Gazan people. So I'm really over this idea like somehow Israel has the moral high ground and we have to get behind them.
I didn't say that.
We've got to go after the bad guys.
I wasn't saying that.
But we have.
Oh, hang on. Look, we can come to Gaza where I think we'll reach agreement about what Israel's government's been doing there in the last few months. Without
but it's relevant. If you're going to call Iranians terrorists, if they right now had an open concentration camp where they were mass killing their own people, we would all be saying this is ridiculous. So it's rich to me that people are concerned about Iran having nukes. But I'm concerned about Israel, who won't even admit that they have nukes, having nukes, while at the same time, they are executing a genocide and a Holocaust in Gaza that the world is watching. So who's the bigger terrorist is the question today. I would say, as an American, that if we're going to get behind a regime change, it should be in Israel first. So that would be my position. I think the position of a lot of people who are waking up to the fact that Zionism has brought us nothing but grief in America.
Candace brings up another excellent point. Who is the bigger terrorist here? Who's causing the most issues? And if we go back to the previous topic, who's causing the biggest issues to the West? The answer is without a shadow of a doubt, Israel. 300 billion in aid was sent from the US alone. The UK sent close to 100 million pounds worth of aid over the last 3 years to Israel. No military aid was sent to Palestine. Let's not forget that Iran was this close to closing the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's global oil and gas flows. That would have had a massive effect on every Westerner already struggling through the cost of living crisis. Why was Iran contemplating closing it down? Because of Israel's unprovoked attack on Iran.
You name one positive thing that Zionists have contributed to America? That us fighting these perpetual wars on behalf of Zionism has contributed to America?
But can you also recognize that Israel, placed where it is, as a tiny thumbprint in the middle of a region where you have massive countries full of a lot of people that want to wish them harm, and in the case of the terror groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, actually want to get rid of Israel and all Israelis altogether, can you accept that if you have a huge nation like Iran with 90 million people, and they are facilitating these terror groups to that purpose, that Iran has to defend itself? Now, I would not disagree with you about what has been going on in Gaza in the last few months. I've been very vocal in my criticism of that. Nor do I disagree, by the way, that it wouldn't help Israel if they did have regime change and Netanyahu wasn't prime minister anymore. So on those points, I think we have agreement. But I come back to the fact that the reason Trump has done this, I think, is that he has for a long time said Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. I think he's absolutely right to believe that would be a pretty terrifying escalation of the power of a country that's been so wedded to terrorism in the region. And I think he took the action for that reason. So I don't really agree that he's only doing it because Bibi Netanyahu wants him to go along and do it. I think he's doing it because he believes it's in America's strategic interest that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. Enough about 9 to 5.
A tiny thumbprint, yes, that receives billions every year in aid, plus the only country in the Middle East to possess nukes. It's not a tiny country. It's got as much firepower as the US, as well as having the US as a side chick. Netanyahu absolutely needs to go, and the only country that's been wedded to terrorism is Israel, not Iran.
Name something positive that our Zionist AIPAC foreign policy has brought to America.
Well, I think the positive side of, if you want an answer about that, is that America has been Israel's steadfast ally because it recognizes as a country that Israel has been under an almost unique, multifaceted threat on its border for a very long time from people that want to destroy it. And that you may not see that as a benefit, but Israel has been very supportive to the United States in many ways. Right. So why shouldn't America?
I just want something concrete that has been benefit. Like, we got better in America in this way. Just name something. Gas prices, just something that the average American can relate to.
Well, you're not going to have a correlation between Zionism and gas prices in America. Of course, you're not.
No, I'm just
obviously
giving you an example. Just tell me one thing that
tangible benefits.
Because what your argument here is like, well, you get a pat on the back and you can say that you helped this country, which was formed in 1948 by pretending to be refugees, if you will, and being invited into the homes of Palestinians, the horrific story
of what happened.
Well, they weren't
pretending to be refugees. They were people fleeing a Holocaust.
Let's be clear. Let me finish my statement.
What do you mean pretending to be refugees?
Let me finish my statement. When I say pretending to be refugees and being invited into the home, you would think that these people were helpless and were going to be grateful to the people that hosted them. People like Muhammad Hadid, Bella Hadid and Gigi Hadid's father, who was an infant at this time in his mother's arms. She had just given birth. They had invited these refugees because of the goodness of their heart. And then one day they return home and their doors are locked and they are told that if you try to enter, you are going to be shot and killed. That is the reality of how Israel was established as a state. Okay, that is not a stain that you can wipe from history. Most Americans growing up actually believe what happened was that, okay, it was a little messy. That's what happens after wars. Borders get changed. But at the very least, they were given money. I mean, you've lived here for hundreds of years. Here's money for your property. No, that's not what happened. They were forced out of their homes at gunpoint.
Listen,
and it's wrong. So we get to be the nation on the back. According to you, the thing that America gets. Let me finish. I'm going to let you finish. It's your show. We can. But let me finish. But your argument is that, well, we get to be is that nation that keeps supporting it as they continue to move their borders in this way. Now we're seeing that incursion into Gaza, and we are certainly going to see it by the end of this administration in the West Bank, because like I said, that is why Miriam Adelson gave Trump $100 million.
Israel does nothing for the US. When is Piers going to wake up? When are the American soldiers going to wake up? Why are you fighting for a country that doesn't benefit your country, your families at all? Instead, you're putting your life at risk for absolutely no reason. What has Israel done for you except the bombing of the US Liberty? What have they done for the UK except bombing the King David Hotel? The world is upside down and needs to wake up. Regime change needs to take place today, and it needs to be done in Israel ASAP.
Look, let me pull you back to something you said, which has caused a lot of controversy, which is this issue of dishonorable discharge. Let's take a listen.
I do believe that if war in Iran is on the agenda, and that appears so, get dishonorably discharged. Who cares? Who cares? Why should you go die in a foreign land? You now have the benefit of 2020. You can see, think about those men and those women who died because they were pitched that they were serving their country because there were weapons of mass destruction, right? They were serving their country because the Taliban, they were serving their country, whatever, and these people gave up their lives. And ask yourselves, for what? And the answer to that question is for the elites. They're like toy soldiers.
When you said that, were you aware of the repercussions if people dishonorably discharged?
So just to put this into context, this is like the Q&A, live Q&A portion at the end of my show. And being facetious, but also being completely honest, that they should begin to consider, and that was somebody asking, what should we do? Like, should we leave the military? Because they also
do you regret
are
saying
recognizing that? No, I don't regret saying that. I don't.
But you
regret
know the
having
repercussions if you do discharge dishonorably.
Okay, well, I would imagine that the people that are in the military who were going to, if they were going to listen to my podcast and they were going to dishonorably discharge, that they would know the consequences. So it's completely ridiculous. And again, we see this over and over again where people can't answer the broader questions. They try to suddenly peg in, well, you said this one thing. No. The broader conversation that we are having.
Candace, it's not a small thing.
No, let me finish. Let me finish.
You're basically you're encouraging
Piers,
US servicemen and women to dishonorably discharge.
You play a clip, and I'm trying to answer it. You know, you can't do that. You ask a question.
Well, you're trying to downplay it,
and I'm responding. No, I am. No, you're trying to upplay it. Is what the issue is. This is exactly.
I'm just repeating what you said.
No, you're not. You're playing what I said, and I'm responding to it and telling you that the broader piece of that conversation, when you have troops that are now asking that question, is they are recognizing that America is in steep decline, that our military comes back and they are treated like dirt, that a lot of these men, and we're talking about decades, white American males come back and they're told that they're racist and they're treated like crap, that they're white supremacists, if they have a different vision for this country. So why are they dying in these overseas wars for Bibi Netanyahu? Okay, and let me again try to answer that question that I asked you at the beginning, which is, what has Zionism won America?
I'm not going
what
to keep coming back to the same thing.
No, let me finish. Why won't you let me answer that? Why won't you let me actually say what people are recognizing? You come back and there are open borders and you're told that you are racist. Okay, you come back and you're told that you are racist if you don't want open borders. Meanwhile, you're sent overseas to defend Israel's borders.
I absolutely agree with Candace. The number of videos I've seen of retired veterans in the US who are homeless with no money, no food, no jobs, psychological disorders is shameful. According to the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans, 13% of all adult homeless people are veterans. Then we hear Trump giving this great old speech thanking God for our soldiers, yet when they retire they're living on the streets. Look at the retired soldiers in the countries in the Middle East. They're living like kings. No soldier of the West should be actively engaging in warfare for a country like Israel. Anyway guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Support me by liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.